We were smoking in here, but we don't do that anymore.
Right, yeah, we quit doing that. It was bad for our health.
It ended up being a big mess. Well intended.
You're just trying to be nice.
You are listening to EMS with your hosts, Erik Axene and Matt Ball.
Well, this is an honor to be here today. We've got a very special guest here with Jerry Wells with us. 35 years in the fire service.
Yes, sir.
Speaks nationally on all sorts of different topics that I think will resonate with our audience. And I've just in the short time I've been able to talk to you, the things you have to say just get me so excited because a lot of what I think we all desire to do in life, whether it's the team of marriage, the team of the fire service, the team of a work, wherever work environment you're in, there's some pretty amazing concepts here that I think are real fundamental, with whether it's leadership or teamwork. And and I'm going to stop talking, and we're going to give you the floor, Jerry, and we'll have a conversation here. And I think the way we're going to do this is we're going to give you an hour with our audience. And if you could only give 1 hour of information and pearls of wisdom to our audience, what would you do in that hour of time? I think that's the way we'll start.
I got you. Yeah. First thing I would do is ask for 3 more hours because it would take that long just to get going. Yeah. When I started, years ago, before I ever stood up in front of somebody to talk, never in my life would I would say I would be that guy up there talking to somebody, especially traveling across country to tell a story. And one of my fire chiefs kicked me kind of in the butt and said, "You're going to get up and talk at this event." And I said, "Chief, I don't do that, And anyway, to make a really long story short, I eventually got up in front of somebody and I gave a little class, and it started with the ultimate team sport concept because I found this video of, it was a documentary about Boise State and Chris Peterson, their coach, and how they had a crazy good season, beat OU in the Fiesta Bowl. And a lot of the things they said as they're talking and they're one-on-one getting interviewed, by this film crew, I'm just sitting there going, man, this is fire service stuff. This is, Chris Peterson talking about be here now. That's one of the things you brought up. That was one of the things that came from Chris Peterson, Boise State University. He says, whether it's weights, films, or running, I want them all about it. When it's time to play PlayStation, I want them all about PlayStation. We call that be here now. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, in a world where I'm a boss in a fire department, where guys they run a pool service, they run a lawn business, they run a EMS program, they run this, that, whatever, we forget that 24 hours we're actually firefighters right now. And guys, their businesses get so successful that they start pushing the fire service off to the side, and they start doing that on duty, and that's hard for a motivator to motivate, because that's doing better than the fire service, and you start losing guys. And I brought that concept to FDIC, which is Fire Department Instructors Conference, one of the biggest fire department conferences in the nation.
One in Indianapolis, right?
Indianapolis. Yeah. And I got to do that class, and that was one of the things that jumped out at a couple of guys. And one of the guys named Sean Gray, he's from Georgia, Cobb County, Georgia. He found me that night after class. We were out on the town, and he come up and said, "I was in your class, Chief, first time I ever met him." He goes, "That be here now." He goes, "We have that same issue." And he said, "I'm going to get a sign made. It's going to say be here now, and it's just going to be up over our fire station door, that when we come in from the parking lot at 7 o'clock in the morning, 6:30, whenever it is, we walk under that, and we're going to go, today I'm a firefighter." So that's how that started. And that was what gave me the ability, the courage to get up and speak in front of hundreds of people, firefighters, especially one of the hardest audiences in the world to talk to, because they're all type A, they all can do it better, they know better than you, and their attention span's really short, so you got to be entertaining and have good, you just got to be able to talk in front of people. Yep. If you talk like Ferris Bueller's instructor, they're out and they're gone.
Bueller.
And Bueller. Matter of fact, that's one of the things I do at FDIC. One of the guys will come in. he comes in, the first cool dude comes in and sits right by the back door, the first chair closest to the back. And I go up and introduce myself, and I say, hey, I'm Jerry, how are you? I'm good, sir. Well, they wear name bags, tags right here, and it'll say, let's say his name, Larry or whatever. I go, hey, Larry, I'm on to you, He goes, sir? And I go, I'm on to you, dude. I know how you are. You come in, grab the first chair, first break. If I suck, you're out of here, right? I see your empty chair, Larry. I know your name, so I'm going to call on you. So me and Larry we're good friends right off the bat. So,
Yep.
Which is, one of those leadership concepts right on its own is get to know your audience, let your audience know you, and know people's names, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's how that started. When I did the first class and through some of my little personal stories, and I'm a person that wants to hear a story. I love firehouse stories. I love table time around the kitchen table. I learn from all these old stories better than a book because I'm a horrible reader. I want to hear a story. There are people out there that don't want to hear stories, I guess, or some of mine because they write in my, too many stories. But that's how I've learned, and that's how I teach. I tell a lot of stories, and I bring those into people's lives. But I had a lot of guys and people coming up to me after classes, writing me emails and saying, you need to write a book. You need to get this out to people. These stories they changed my life. I've had people write me letters that says I was months away, weeks away from leaving the fire service, and now I'm all in. I'm so inspired. That makes you want to go get on an airplane and fly across and go do another lecture, just when I don't want to go do another one because it's time away from home, and I think, what am I doing? This is stuff everybody knows, but it's not. It's so simple to me, but the leadership in our firehouses are often weak. They're often self-centered. They're often egotistical. We talked about this earlier. Some guys really need to hear some of this stuff, and I've been forced into believing that because I thought it was so simple. Thought everybody knew this stuff.
Sometimes the simplest things are the most important thing, and we get so focused on some of these complex thoughts, and sometimes we forget about the basics.
Well, there's a bazillion books wrote on leadership.
Yeah.
It's tossed around all the time, and to me, it's not that big a deal, but it's really it's hard to do.
Yeah, it's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah. Simple to understand, but it's extremely difficult to do, especially if you're going to be good at it. Now, if you go over to Louisville, and that scares me doing a podcast because there's guys over there that would tell you I'm one of the worst people in the world because most of those guys are people that I had to be a leader to. I actually had to enforce some things on because they weren't doing their job. So now I'm the bad guy. That's the way it is. So the first thing about leadership is you got to get comfortable walking amongst your critics. That's what I would tell people. Because in the fire service, they are the higher up you go, you become more isolated, right? Because as a firefighter, you got your buddies. Drivers, there's one of those in the firehouse, maybe an officer in the firehouse. Battalion chief, you're not even in the firehouse. So I walk into a firehouse, everybody acts like, oh, everything's great. We're just planting the flowers out here in the flower bed, and I leave. And, that's when you learn who you are, So you gotta be comfortable walking amongst your critics because everybody's going to be your critic because you got a target on your back, as a boss. So
is part of that not trying to please everybody?
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
I got a video that I play. I have become a Texas A&M fan, forced into it because I've got two kids down there. But Jimbo Fisher has just an inspiring video. But he talks about you don't want to be loved in this world. You want to be respected. If you're gonna walk the walk and talk the talk, you better fight to be respected, not loved. Until that sunk into me, being a battalion chief leader was pretty challenging to me. And then one day all that kind of sunk in and I went, okay, I get that. I don't need you to like me or love me, but I want you to respect me. When the tones hit, you want to be glad I'm your boss. And when I started buying into that and believing it, that whole thing of dealing with difficult people, it was easy. It was so easy because And I've had guys, that work under me. I say, what you need to understand is when you get to a point, a crossroad of a difficult decision, look on in our uniform, it's our left shoulder. I said, every once in a while, just look down and look at that left shoulder. What does it say? Louisville Fire Department. Then you go back and you work that disciplinary issue or that people issue because it's the Louisville Fire Department. Because I had an officer tell me one day, man, I really didn't know what to do. It was kind of a personal thing. And I go, but was it a reflection of our fire department if it got beyond his personal? He goes, oh, yes, sir. And I go, that's when you look on your left shoulder. If you're having trouble making a decision, what do? Look at that because you represent an organization that's bigger than you. So another leadership concept. You got to got to focus on things bigger than yourself because you're just a small cog in something big. And if we believe in it like this group of guys does, the fire service, it's not McKinney Fire Department, it's not Louisville, it's the fire service, the American fire service. We all represent something bigger than ourselves. So that helped me also to buy into that. My dad was a Dallas firefighter, so I walk in the shadows of him. He was a respected chief. They called him, people that I've met said he's a chief's chief. Sorry, back that up, he's a firefighter's chief.
Yeah.
That's a compliment.
Huge compliment.
Yeah. So when I walk with a uniform on, I'm walking in the shadows of the footpaths that he took, walking, and I've never, I hadn't been in Dallas Fire Department since I did paramedic school. But I represent him, and so there's a lot of great leaders in this organization that's been here, done this way before I got here, and that's how I look at it. I'm just trying to make things better than where I found them.
In my time in the fire service, I think one of the biggest struggles I've seen from leaders is that newly promoted officer. And especially somebody that's, a sharp guy and was motivated, and within 5 or 6 years, he's made captain rank. And like you said, firemen are a fickle bunch. And so you might have a 15, 20-year firefighter or 25-year driver, and you got a 6-year guy that's the officer. What's your advice? Because I know in my fire department, we got a lot of promotions and guys promote really young. What would be your advice of how to handle that seniority difference, that new officer, even if they've been a firefighter for a long time, but they've now met that company officer rank? What would be your
So that
advice?
company officer now is in place, and you might have some of these senior guys? Yeah, absolutely. That happened to me. As a battalion chief, when I got promoted to battalion, I had 2 captains on my shift that were my bosses. Now I'm their boss. They were difficult, They weren't necessarily difficult on me, but it was just a difficult situation, exactly what you're talking about. It's intimidating. That it's not supposed to happen that way.
Right.
They're not interested in doing my job, but I had to. Bottom line is know what your job is, and you do it regardless of who that guy is or who that guy is. If I was going into a firehouse, I would find that most senior guy, maybe that most outspoken guy, and I would start the slow process of winning him over because he's your best ally.
Yeah.
And just like in the fire service, most of our fire guys that want to change something, that want to win somebody over, they're driving a speedboat and they think they can do a hairpin turn and spin around and get everything going their way. You drive a battleship. You got to think of it as a battleship. It takes a while to turn a battleship. You got to do it methodically, carefully, a little bit under the radar, and start getting guys to buy into what you're selling. And I don't know. That's how I would do it.
Yeah.
You can't walk into a firehouse as a brand new officer and think you're, beat
Drop
your
the
chest.
hammer,
And I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
here now. And things are going to change. It don't work. It just don't work.
Yeah.
Lou Holtz, I guess, is I've got my notes here of all the things I've ever thought about, but I've got a video I play in one of my classes where his boss, the athletic director of Notre Dame University, says, "I'm going to go out there and I'm going to announce to the team and everybody else that Lou Holtz is now the new head coach of Notre Dame. I'm not going to tell them he's the leader.
Right.
I'm going to announce you're the head coach. The players will decide if you're the leader or not." Perfect. I mean, it's a perfect analogy for what you're asking right there. Go be humble.
Yeah.
And go be the leader that and be the captain of that station,
Yep.
they'll make you a leader. If you do the right things.
What did we say? We were talking about leadership yesterday, and we made the comment of, you can be a leader without a title, and you can have a title without being a leader.
Yeah.
And that is a huge thing, I think, in the fire service.
Absolutely.
I had a guy tell me one time, he's a young officer, pretty extensive military background, and he said, "Well, you can't create change from the bottom." Well, I disagree with that.
Yeah, I disagree.
Yeah, I disagree with that because I think you can. It's all about, we have in my city leaders at all levels. And it started in the Navy with a concept of the lowest guy on this Navy vessel mopping the floors. He has a say. He's the expert at what he does. He has a say in how he does it. And he knows better than I know how to do these things. And so he's a leader in his area. So yeah, you can be a leader at any stage in your career.
Some of the most profound experiences I've had as a leader in the hospital have been doing some of the most counterintuitive things, and I've made more of an impact than I ever thought possible.
Yeah.
And frankly, if you get a bunch of people mad at you, you're probably doing something good sometimes.
Yes. Critics.
That's my point. Yeah.
We were having trouble. We had staffing issues, so I started changing the linens. It's like, what's the doctor doing changing the linens? Well, I knew my nurses had to do it, and I had extra time, and they had tons of stuff to do, and they're short-staffed.
Yeah.
So I changed the linens, and the nurses are very grateful, of course, and then the word started to spread, and then some of the doctors were not appreciative of that. Because if I start doing those jobs,
they're expected to.
not only are they going to do it, but then their point was, well, then the hospital isn't going to realize that that's a needed job because you're doing it. No, anyway, it ended up being a big mess. Well intended.
You're just trying to be nice.
I was actually just trying to follow my mom's advice.
There you go.
As servant leadership. But,
there you go.
But that caused a bit of a rift within the physician community that I was working with. For good reason, and it ended up being the point of me bringing it up, Jerry, is that I had no idea what I was doing. I was just trying to help, and it ended up causing some issues. But what it ended up doing is the nurses so appreciated their leader doing some of these jobs. They felt so supported, and so to me, I met with the leadership of the nursing staff there, and what else can I do? Yeah. And ended up doing other things. Yeah. And you kind of said it earlier. I loved one of your comments was that you're really not trying to please everybody, and you got to be comfortable with your critics. I think did I word that right?
Be careful. You got to be comfortable walking amongst your critics. Yes, is what I said.
And I think I love the way you verbalized it and articulated that because that's something I struggle with. I like to be a people pleaser, and
you want to know everybody loves you when you walk in the room.
Yeah, but this is not going to happen.
No, it's not.
It's always going to.
If you're doing your job, it will not happen.
So how do you handle stuff like that? I mean, how did you, as a battalion chief there, a new battalion chief, build these relationships? I mean, it took time, I suppose. Was it your actions? You were just very intentional about them?
I think so, and one of my best examples was I got moved to a shift that had some issues, and my boss came in and said, we're going to change the battalions around, and I got sent to a shift that had some troubles. And so I said, okay, here's the big test. Here's all this stuff I go around talking about. I said, now I'm going to have to really apply it, and let's see if it works, So I knew it worked. So I went there. And I gathered them up, and we had a meeting right off the bat. And I put the captains on the front row, drivers in kind of in order, and put the firefighters in the back. And I said, one of the most important things you can do in any job or organization you're involved in is know your boss. Your job, my job would be, I want to know my boss really well. I want to know him on a personal level. I want to know him on a professional level. I want to know what he likes. I really want to know what he dislikes, what makes him just crazy. I like doing that. And so you do that in a fire service deal. You do it on your days off. You find out who your boss is. What really makes him crazy? And I said, I'm going to make this easy on you guys. I'm fixing to give it to you right here in this meeting. You're going to know everything. You're going to see right through me, And I just laid it out for them. And I had guys look at me like, are you crazy? I turn their head like a puppy and look at me, you really expect me? You're going to do that. And I go, test me, trust me, watch what happens. A small example was I told them, if your engine breaks down, I'm your first call. Call me, I'll bring you another rig. You expect me to call at 2 o'clock in the morning? I'm out doing a medical call. I'm supposed to call my battalion chief and wake him up. And I said, absolutely. I said, the extra engine is probably at the firehouse I'm at. I have a driver. There's 2 of us. We can take your rig out there to you. We can help you switch over and get you back in service quicker. That's $500,000 rig that's out of service. You're in a busy district. Somebody else might need your services, so we get you out there quicker. We'll take the broke down engine. Either I'll call a wrecker or I'll drive it back with my driver. We'll go back to bed in an hour. You'll be only out an hour, and it all works. We're all a team. And he goes, well, I've never been around anything like that. And I said, try me. The guy called me 2 times very shortly because he's in a busy house, and it broke down. First thing, 2 o'clock in the morning, we come rolling up, just like I said. Man, I hate y'all do this. Let's switch this stuff over. We had them back in service in 15 minutes. They're going back to bed. Got them a good night's sleep the rest of the night. We took the engine back. It's simple things like that. I wanted to serve them. And I told the captains, I'm here to make your job as easy as it can be. Here's what I'm going to start by doing. I'm also coming to your calls. Don't think because the chief's showing up that I'm looking for trouble. I like making calls, and I'm coming. One of the guy, I brought a guy over to be my driver. His name's Gary Graham. Delane was his name. And about a month in after driving me, he goes, well, I have learned something about you. We were backing into the bay. And he goes, he said, let me tell you something I learned about you pretty quick. And I said, what's that? He goes, I got to keep my work gloves in my side door of this rig. I used to keep them in my bunker pants, but now that I'm a chief driver, didn't think I'd need them. But no, I keep them in the driver's door. And I go, I appreciate that. That's a good compliment. Yeah. He goes, yeah, you get out and get busy with your guys. And he said, I'm not used to that. And I go, but they're our guys. We're part of that team, So that's how that rolls, servant leadership. It's easy to talk about. Get out there and do it, and it'll be more fun, I sat with Al Brunacini one day, and him and I sat up in the corner of this little auditorium. We were both speaking at this event, and he's the one that started driving home to me the importance of wearing the same uniform as my guys. We used to wear white shirts, as a battalion chief. Yeah. I said, Chief, I want to be like my guys. He goes, you need to look like your guys. And he told me 2 things. He goes, in wartime, all the way back, he said, when the leader of the platoon shows up and he's standing out there looking all fancy and I said, who gets the bullet first? A good enemy's going to take out the leader. He says, you don't want to look different than everybody else, And he says, psychology speaking, a young kid will come and hang out with you and talk to you if you're dressed like he is, way more than if you look like, one of those big bosses. And I go, man, Phoenix, their battalion chiefs wore Class Bs just like the guys that's running the calls, We got to wear them pretty soon after that. I came back pushing that pretty hard.
In the culture of medicine, we wear white coats. And when you're a student, you wear a short coat. When you're an attending, you wear a long coat. And I'll never forget one of my attendings. He wore a short coat. He wanted to remember and to remind his students that you never stop learning. You're never not a student. And that humility that he showed and that you're speaking of here, that there's something about being part of the team. Yep. And even though you're the leader, you don't have to look at, you're the servant leadership. You asked me in a conversation prior to this. I do a lecture now called The Last Lecture, and I've kind of all the talks I ever do, all the titles I ever do. I brought some of my high points out of each one. So it's the concept is if you think this is the last opportunity you'll ever get to assemble a group of firefighters, whatever your audience is, and give a speech, what would you tell them? And you mentioned that a little bit. One of the things I say in that is if I was your fire chief, we would all wear white duty belts. We have these Class B uniforms, all black or dark blue Nomex, like your duty shirt there. Yep. But with that tucked in would be a white belt, leather belt, just like our black ones. Well, there's my old one right there, but it would be white. Yeah. And it's the same concept. And so I'll ask the audience, I said, what's the significance of a white belt?
any martial arts guys in here, finally someone will speak up. Trying to get somebody to speak up is pretty difficult sometimes. Somebody will say, it means an apprentice. It's the first belt you get. You're brand new. You got a lot to learn. And I go, there you go. I said, so my point would be, yes, it would be gaudy. It would be, and all the firemen are going, oh my gosh, we don't want this guy as a chief. I go, no, I'm being really serious. We would have white belts. Can you imagine walking with your crew through the grocery store, pushing a buggy, and some little hot-looking girl comes up to you and says, they always want to talk to the fire guys, says, but what's up with that belt? She goes, well, that's what we wear now. It reminds us that we've got a lot to learn, that we're never going to know everything, and that we've got to constantly be learning, And I said, that's what that's about. And if you want to be a leader, you better remember you don't know it all. Just because you're newly promoted, or maybe you've been a battalion chief for 15 years, I've still got a lot to learn. I've got more to learn than these guys do because I'm their boss. I'm the guy who makes the call that's got to not miss something. I can't miss something or somebody gets hurt, I've got to continue to be learning as well. So I tell them, you'd be wearing white belts. Somebody hire me as chief, That gets me out of that deal. It won't happen.
Something that Matt and I are real passionate about, we do a lot of medical education. And when we're teaching and we're trying to pass along information, sometimes there's a misconception that the doctors just know everything. I learned so much from this guy.
Yeah.
And every time we have a lecture, I learn something. And it helps me to be a better medical director, to understand better, more about the fire service.
Right.
And I like to think you learn things from time to time from me. But
Yes, quite a bit actually.
No, but but my point though is that I think when you're teaching, you do some of the best learning.
Yeah.
Leadership positions I've learned so much about myself and other people when you're putting your foot on the iron, or I don't know what the expression is, when your seat's on the iron. I don't know what's the expression I'm trying to think of here. Well,
in the hot seat.
In the hot seat. That's it. When you're in the hot seat though, and the decisions that you make are going to really make or break you, you learn so much. To me, and walking through that in humility and messing up and being honest with them, your folks is I think a powerful tool.
Absolutely. Yeah, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and the higher up you go, the more you're apt to make because there's a lot going on. I miss a lot of stuff too. You're going to miss a lot.
Yep.
But you acknowledge that.
Absolutely.
And I've seen leaders come through and they think they don't ever make a mistake. I've never made a mistake. Like, come on, man. You've been doing this job for 10 years. You telling me you've never made a mistake? Like, that's not reasonable. We all make mistakes.
Daily.
Yeah.
I think the best leaders I've met who have made mistakes and apologized for it and showed a lot of humility in that is so powerful to be vulnerable like that. I mean, there's a line there. You got to be careful with the way you communicate, but I think that's huge. That's huge too.
That's huge for everybody, admitting you make mistakes.
I remember a fire where I sent a guy to the roof. And that's one of the first decisions I will make. We had pre-assignment, so in Louisville, I don't get up there and start doing command. I'm in charge, but the first 10 minutes, they've already got their jobs. They go to work. Well, I sent a guy that was a questionable roof, and I sent him up there because I trusted him. I wouldn't have pick this guy. I would have probably changed that decision with this particular crew, but this was one of my ace crews. And I said, go ahead, and he got up there and did exactly what he's supposed to do. He got up there and started coming back down. He goes, nah, can't do it. And I said, all right, but his last step on the rung, he missed, kind of fell backwards, and I'm sitting there going, I took that real personal. That was my guy. If I wouldn't have gave him that was on me. Even something as simple as that was on me. If he'd have broke his leg, it'd been my fault because I told him to go up there and do that. And it was a marginal call, but I took it personal. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how leadership's supposed to work. And it's every decision's it's my responsibility. So.
I like that you said responsibility. I know that's really important to you, just based on what I've learned from you. We're at the end of part one here. We'll continue talking, but I mean, just learning, just in the 30 minutes we've been together today, I've learned a bunch, and I'm looking forward to learning more on our second part. And I hope you'll join us for part two with our time with Jerry Wells. Be safe out there.